What's up, booktube? Welcome back. My name is Laura if you're new here, and today I'm doing a very belated June wrap up. So, still slumping, like a lot. It has been almost 3 months of a reading slump, and I am so sick of this, guys. And now, like, it's not even a reading slump, it is also a filming slump, an editing slump, just a general creativity and also a life slump. Love that for me. But yeah, I just haven't had the motivation to do like any kind of filming, like no reading, like pretty much nothing. I have been busy with life, like I've been hanging out with people a lot. It's summer, I've been at the beach, so I'm not just like sitting at home like lying in bed doing nothing. I am doing things and actually having a life for once, so I'm not complaining about it. But I've also disappeared off the face of the internet in the last couple of weeks, so hello. You guys have not seen my face in a while apparently. But anyways, so June was not a good reading month. It was mildly better than May, just a little bit, but still sucked. So in June I read 5 books, DNF 2, and read a grand total of 1,675 pages, which again is just marginally better than May. It was an extra 100 pages than May, and that is it. So it's something. It is it is what it is, So I'll start with the DNFs. The first one was Arsenic and Adobo by, oh god, the name, Manansala, I think it is. I could be wrong, but the photo is here so you can see. This one is a cozy mystery about a woman who has just moved back to her hometown and is working in her family's Filipino restaurant. And there is a food critic in town who is also one of her ex-boyfriends from high school, and they hate each other, and he ends up dropping dead in their restaurant one day. And of course, the main character, being his ex-girlfriend, is being blamed for it. This one I was reading as part of a video that I was doing that you guys will see at some point soon whenever I get around to finishing it. And yeah, it just really wasn't for me. I was not feeling it, so I just put it down. I liked the characters, I just didn't care for the mystery element whatsoever. The setting was great, like the food made me so hungry. But yeah, the mystery was just not for me, so I DNF'd. And then my other DNF was sadly Star Daughter by Thakrar. I wanted to love this one so badly. The concept is fascinating, it sounds amazing. This one is a Hindu-inspired YA fantasy about a girl in high school who is half star. Like, her mother is literally a celestial goddess. She is actually a star, but she has to hide it from the world until one day her father falls very, very ill, and the only way for her to save him is to go to the stars to try and ask her mother to help him. And she ends up getting roped into some kind of magical competition among the other children of the gods, basically, I think is how it goes. I didn't actually get far enough in for them to get to the stars. I wanted to try and stick it out long enough to get to that part, but I was so bored. I'm learning I don't really like reading about teenagers in high school doing high school things. I love YA fantasy, but I think I'm learning that like my tastes are changing to the point now where like if they are actively in high school, I probably don't want to read it. If they're on like summer vacation or whatever, that's fine, but I just don't want to be reading about kids like going to school and doing homework and having assignments. Like, I don't care. So I was trying really hard to just like make it through to the point where she was no longer in school and like she went off to the stars, and I kept being like, oh yeah, I'll wait until I get there and then I'll DNF, and then I just like wasn't picking it up, and then I was like, okay, like it's been 3 weeks and I haven't touched this book, so I'm just gonna DNF it. So I got about 75 pages into it, and I just like, wasn't for me. I'm so sad about it because I had such high hopes for that one, but yeah, it just was not doing it for me, like, at all. Moving on to the books that I did read, the first one was The Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks by Mackenzi. This is the third and final book in the Montague siblings trilogy, which I just adored. The first book of the series follows Monty, who is the oldest son of this like wealthy, I don't even know what he does, to be honest. I think he's a politician, honestly. Not a clue what the family does, but they're very well off. And Monty is kind of a disappointment. He is treated very poorly by his father, and he's just kind of seen as like reckless, irresponsible, like just not a very good kid according to his family. But then when he turns, I think like 16, I think he is in the first book, he goes on his grand tour and he brings along his sister Felicity and his best friend Percy, who he is very much in love with. And the three of them end up like getting kidnapped by pirates and all these things happening. It was crazy ridiculous. And while they're on this adventure, they realize that maybe they don't want to go home, and things go from there. And then in the third book, it takes place like I think about 20 years later, when Adrian, the little brother who was a baby in the first 2 books, he is now grown up and he has the spyglass that their mother had, and he has to find the other half of it, and it turns out that his long lost brother that he had no idea even existed maybe knows where it is. So they all reconnect and go on this huge adventure all over Europe and Africa, and just like traveling so many places together trying to find the mystery of the spyglass. This was such a fun book. I loved the character of Adrian. He deals with a lot of mental health issues, with being that this book is set, I think, in the early 1700s. There's like no diagnosis for it, and he has no way to help himself, so he just has to deal with it. And he has like some really severe struggles, I believe, with OCD. And like he's just such a sweetheart, and like the people around him love him so much. And it was just really wholesome to see like a caring partner and like caring siblings and the people just like wanting to help him, but him like just resisting so hard because he feels like he can't accept help and like all these things. Anyways, that was like a whole part of it, but it was so well done. I loved seeing that in there. I loved the characters in here. Monty and Percy and Felicity were just so much fun. I really wish that Percy was in this one a bit more, but it was great to see Monty and Adrian be able to have time to get to know each other just on their own without Percy being there. But either way, I loved this book. It was so much fun. I gave it 4 stars, and it was just a fantastic conclusion to this trilogy that I've been reading for like 5 years now. So yeah, I'm very happy that it ended how it did, and it was just like, it was so good. It wasn't perfect. There were some things that like could have been better in terms of pacing and like the way that humor was used sometimes. Like I feel like there were jokes put in where there didn't need to be jokes, and the humor kind of took away from what could have been really touching moments, but it was still great, and I'm glad that I finally picked it up. After that, I read Elysium Girls by Kate Pentecost. This one has been on my TBR for so long, and I was so looking forward to it, and it was such a letdown. I'm so sad. This one has like the coolest concept ever. So it takes place during the Dust Bowl era in America. I think like that's the 1930s, I think it is. It's a historical steampunk Wild West fantasy set in the Dust Bowl. Like how fucking cool is that? There were these like steampunk horses powered by magic, and like there was so much happening here, and it just did not deliver. Okay, synopsis. So it takes place in the Dust Bowl, and like there's this town, I think they're in Oklahoma, and the goddesses of life and death, they wanted to play a game, they were bored, and so they sent a huge dust storm to basically wipe out everything, and they made this town called Elysium be their playground. So they have a bet going on where the people in this town have to live good lives for 10 years, and at the end of 10 years they will come and like judge them and see if they actually were successful or not, and if they are, then they get to live, and if not, then they'll die. And so the book kicks off, I think like maybe 6 months before the end of the game, and our main character is somebody who like has visions of rain sometimes, and she's seen as this like outcast, and then finds out that she's actually a witch. And then this guy comes to town who's actually a demon, but no one knows that he's a demon, and like just there's so much happening to it, and the two of them end up being exiled, and they find this like badass team of like all female like rogue cowboy kind of thing, and like there's just so much going on in this book, and it was so cool. It was like such an interesting concept, but it was like the biggest letdown ever. It was so boring. Like all the cool stuff in the synopsis about the like all female band of like cowboy vigilante kind of thing, like none of that happened until literally the halfway point in the book. I spent 50% just being like, where's all the cool stuff? Like the first half of the book was just her kind of like meandering around the town and like being sad and mopey and like doing literally nothing. And then she's kicked out, and like things kind of start to happen, but like not really. They like start getting to know this group of girls out in the desert, and like still nothing happens, and like it's just the whole book felt like just nothing. Like there was nothing going on. It was so sad. Like this book could have been phenomenal, but it just was not, like at all. I pushed through because I kept waiting for all the cool stuff to happen, and it just didn't. So yeah, it ended up being a 2-star for me and a huge disappointment. I'm genuinely so sad about this one. I do still plan on reading this author's other book, what's it called? That Dark Infinity, I think it is. That also sounds really cool. And you know, Elysium Girls was her first book, so maybe book 2 is gonna be better, but I hope it is, because I want to like this author. I love her concepts, but like, fuck, this book was boring. And then for a positive, I read Not My Type by Evie Mitchell. This is the first book in the All Access series, which is a series of contemporary romance novels all centering on kink and disability. So in this first book, our main character is Frankie, who is this like sunshine and rainbow with bubblegum person who is a wheelchair user, and she runs a podcast all about sex and disability and everything like that. And one of her listeners asks her to do a podcast episode on accessible shibari, so like rope play and all that kind of stuff. And somebody in town happens to run a class on accessible shibari. So they team up to do research together. She joins a class and they get to know each other, and then they just fall hopelessly in love. This book was phenomenal. It was so good. The way that kink was portrayed in here was just so amazing. It was so well done. Like, that's always the issue with having kink in like a lot of popular books, is that like it's not done very well, because you get the like 50 Shades kind of style of it, where it's just like really rough, and like there's like no talk of boundaries and consent, and like it's just like it feels weird. Like you know that the characters are consenting, because like, you know, they're doing it and they're fine, but like actual real kink, like in real life outside of fiction, there is so much negotiations and communication and everything before you ever do anything. That is a huge part of kink, and you never see that portrayed in books, but this one did that. They had a whole like negotiation scene. They had like where they talked about safe words and medical issues, and like where it's okay to touch and not to touch, and like things that they need and aftercare and all of these things. They talked about all of it, and it was so well done. It was such a fantastic portrayal of like real kink and like what kink actually is. And the rope scenes were amazing. Every scene that involved kink was just so well done, and I was so happy to see it. And yeah, it was just phenomenal, and I gave it a full 4 stars. It was incredible. I loved this book so much. I loved the characters in it. There was some really good character growth with the love interest, and just like it was excellent. So if you are into kink or shibari at all, definitely pick this one up, because you will not be disappointed. I thought this was so fantastic. After that, I read Amir Mended by Alix Harrow. This is the sequel to A Spindle Splintered, I think. Yeah. This is like brand new release. It just came out, I think, like a couple days before I read it. So yay me for reading a sequel immediately after it comes out. I'm very happy with myself for that. But this series is so much fun. So it's about a girl who has this very rare disease that's known as the Sleeping Beauty disease, because nobody has ever lived past the age of 21. So on her 21st birthday, her best friend throws her this fantastic Sleeping Beauty themed birthday party, and there's a spindle and everything, and at midnight she goes and pricks her finger of the spindle and ends up falling through a multiverse portal, where she starts seeing like little glimpses of all these other Sleeping Beauties in different dimensions, and she ends up falling into one of these portals and meeting somebody else just like her, except it's a like medieval setting, and she ends up helping her and realizing that she can travel through all these multiverse dimensions and help all of these other Sleeping Beauties and help them to break their stories. So that's what this series is, and book 2 was just carrying on from where we left off in book 1, and it was such a good time. Except in book 2, she ends up somehow breaking the multiverse and ends up going into a different fairy tale. She goes into Snow White, and there she meets the evil queen, and there might be some sparks flying between them. This was such a fun book. I really enjoyed this one. I read it in one sitting. I actually had a great day while I was reading this book. I was going somewhere on the bus and I had the audiobook going, and then on the way home I was like, I'm just gonna like go to the beach. Like, why not? It was a beautiful day. I just like went to the beach and sat down on the grass and just like listened to the entire audiobook in one sitting, and it was just such a lovely day. Had an iced coffee and some pastries. It was great. So just overall a fantastic reading experience, and like the book was great as well. I love this one. It was fantastic, and I gave it 4 stars. And then the last book that I read in June was Six Gun Snow White by Catherynne and Valente. This was my first book by this author, and sadly did not like it at all. Like, not even a little bit. So this one, again, really cool concept. It is a Snow White retelling, but it's set in the Wild West, where Snow White is an indigenous girl whose father is a white man, and I think her mother died in childbirth. So she's raised by this man who like really doesn't love her like at all, and one day he remarries, and her stepmother is horrible to her because she's indigenous, and so after however many years she finally runs away. So that's the gist of it. Like, it's a really cool concept, but like it was just so weird, and like the first half of it was told from Snow White's perspective, but for some reason halfway through it switches to third person, and like it's like somebody else telling the rest of her story, and I just didn't understand why that happened. And like the writing was really hard to follow, and like it was just so nonsensical and chaotic, and like it almost worked for the story, but not quite. Like, I had no idea what was happening at pretty much any point in time. It was just like I had no clue what was going on, which like for me, I love weird whimsical stories. So like for me to have a story that was so whimsical that I couldn't follow it, that is too much for me. I did also read some Own Voices reviews from Indigenous reviewers who were really not happy with the representation. So I'll leave those linked down below for you guys to read for yourselves. But yeah, this was not a book for me. I gave it 2 stars, and I'll probably try reading more from this author, but like probably not for a while. I know she has like a million books, so I'm sure this one was just like a bad one for me. But yeah, we'll see. All right, so those are the books that I read and DNF'd in the month of June. Really hoping that this reading slump leaves me alone soon, because like seriously, I am so sick of this. Right now we are midway through July and I think I've only finished one book. So love that. But anyways, let me know what the best thing that you read in June was. I would love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime though, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.